I want to draw your attention to what Karpathy, former director of AI at Tesla and founding member of OpenAI, told tech podcaster Dorkish Patel. In an interview, he made a statement that I think perfectly captures where we are right now. He said we're entering a decade of AI agents, and that the technology still has a long way to go. Not a year, not 5 years, a decade. And I think that's exactly the right time frame to think about when we're asking the question everyone seems to be asking right now. Are we in an AI bubble? Is it the dot-com bubble all over again? And are we about to crash over the edge? And if so, what does this mean for jobs, the future of work, and the economy?
AI news. Harry V's got all the clues. It's the G-Core AI News Show.
When people say we're in an AI bubble, they're usually drawing parallels to the late 1990s. During the dot-com boom, investors threw money at anything with .com in the name. Companies with no viable business model were valued in the billions. Pets.com, Webvan, eToys, remember those? I certainly don't, I was born before that time. But the bubble burst in 2000, trillions in value evaporated, investors got burned, and for years afterwards, people were extremely skeptical of internet companies. But here's what actually happened. The skeptics were wrong, and the optimists were right. They were just early. The internet did transform everything. E-commerce did take over retail. Digital communication did replace letters and phone calls. And remote work has now become mainstream. Amazon, of course, survived the crash and became one of the most valuable companies on earth. Google launched after the bubble burst, and Facebook came along a few years later. So the technology was real. The transformation was real. The timeline was just longer than the hype cycle suggested. And I posit that that's exactly where we are with AI. Let me give you 3 reasons why I don't think we're in an AI bubble. First, the technology actually works. When the dot-com bubble burst, many of those companies had no product market fit. Pets.com couldn't figure out how to profitably ship 40-pound bags of dog food to your door. Now, they offered free shipping, but this hampered their profit margins. But AI is already delivering value. Right now, today. And let's start then by going through some of the statistics. A new survey from IBM called The Race for ROI shows 2/3 of surveyed enterprises in Europe, Middle East and Africa report significant productivity gains from AI. Studies show workers are saving an average of 5.4% on their work hours using AI, with some employees reporting productivity improvements of up to 40%, and developers seeing gains as high as 126% when using AI coding tools. Large enterprises are experiencing real productivity gains. IBM reported 3.5 billion in cost savings since 2023, and 2/3 of surveyed European enterprises report significant operational improvements from AI. These are actual measurable results happening right now. Second, the infrastructure is being built. During the dot-com bubble, the infrastructure wasn't ready. Internet speeds were slow, e-commerce payment systems were clunky, most people didn't even have reliable internet access. But today, with GPT-5, everyone has access to reasoning models for free. And according to Pew Research Center's September 2025 survey, 21% of US workers say at least some of their work is done with AI, which is up from 16% roughly a year earlier. Microsoft's 2024 Work Trend Index found that 75% of surveyed workers across 31 countries were using AI in the workplace. Now remember, this is just what people officially admit to. And companies like G-Core and others have built the infrastructure that makes AI deployment at large enterprise level actually feasible at scale. Products like Everywhere Inference can be deployed with a few clicks, and they are fully compliant, and they're locked down with no need to send data to OpenAI. Higgsfield, one of our partners, is also leading the way by bringing all the generative AI image and video models under one roof with a creative suite of tools. Apple's latest chips are enabling their foundational models to run not just on laptops but on phones also. And if you've been following our previous videos, you'll know there are new protocols every other week. MCP, A2A, AB2, connecting LLMs to tools, data, and even clearing the way for them to make payments on our behalf. That is fundamentally different from 1999. Third, this isn't speculative investment, it's strategic necessity. The productivity gap between large companies companies adopting AI and smaller ones is widening dramatically. S&P 500 companies have seen 5.5% productivity gains since ChatGPT's launch, where Russell 2000 small cap companies have seen a 12.3% decline. Companies aren't investing in AI because it's trendy. I think they're investing because their competitors are, and falling behind means becoming uncompetitive. This is not bubble behaviour, that's survival. Now this brings me back to Karpathy's interview with Dorkesh Patel that dropped a couple of weeks ago, and it sent ripples through the AI community. Karpathy, a founding member of OpenAI and a former director of AI at Tesla, pushed back hard against the hype, saying the models are not there yet, and the industry is making too big of a jump by pretending current AI agents are ready for widespread deployment. He specifically criticised the year of agents narrative, suggesting that instead we're entering a decade of agents. It's a time frame that's 5 to 10 times longer than what many in Silicon Valley are predicting.
With Andre Karpathy. Andre, why do you say that this will be the decade of agents and not the year of agents?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be here. So the quote that you've just mentioned, it's the decade of agents. That's actually a reaction to an pre-existing quote, I should say, where I think some of the labs, I'm not actually sure who said this, but they were alluding to this being the year of agents with respect to LLMs and how they were going to evolve. And I think I was triggered by that because I feel like there's some over-predictions going on in the industry. Yeah. And in my mind, this is really a lot more accurately described as the decade of agents. Yeah. And we have some very early agents that are actually like extremely impressive and that I use daily, Claude and Codex and so on. But I still feel like there's so much work to be done. And so I think my reaction is like, we'll be working with these things for a decade. They're going to get better and it's going to be wonderful. But I think I was just reacting to the timelines, I suppose, of the implication.
His core argument then is that current AI systems lack essential capabilities like continual learning, proper multimodal perception, reliable tool use, and sufficient reasoning ability. They can't remember what you tell them, they struggle with complex tasks, and they produce what he calls slop.
All you people talking like you know me, calling every sword 2 clip AI slop. I'm sick of it! You think just because it looks too good it can't be real? Man, please, I work hard, okay? Real sweat, real hours, you wanna...
And here's where I think Karpathy is both right and wrong at the same time. He's absolutely right about the current limitations. Anyone who's tried to deploy AI agents in production knows that if you just set them loose, they can be unreliable and they require constant babysitting. But I do think that he's missing something. The technology isn't the bottleneck. Understanding both the limitations and the capabilities of AI is the bottleneck. And this is where I disagree with the bubble narrative. In a bubble, the technology doesn't work, and investors eventually realise they've been sold snake oil. Now, as a history graduate, when I think of a bubble, I'm reminded of the railway mania in the 19th century in the UK. Investors rushed to railway lines across Britain, seeing the obvious value, pushing the share price for all railways up throughout the 1840s, until 1846, when there was a record of 263 Acts of Parliament for setting up new railway companies. The routes totaled 9,500 miles. And remember, railways were a revolutionary invention at this time, but about a third of the railways authorised were never built. Clearly, after most of the lines had been built, the value went down. Not all railway lines were as profitable as others, and about a third of the railways ended up never being built. They were simply fraudulent projects. There were pretty much no checks about whether the railway lines were financially viable. Now, before the railway mania also came the tulip mania in the 17th century, where the value of tulips, a new flower introduced in the Netherlands, skyrocketed, really because tulips were in vogue, only for the market to readjust when people realised they had nowhere near the value. But AI works. They have economic value, unlike tulips, as Bill Gates recently pointed out.
We need to define bubble. If what we mean is like tulips in the Netherlands, that they eventually looked back and said, what the heck, there was nothing there. Those were just tulips. No, that's not where we are. If you mean it's like the internet bubble, where in the end, something very profound happened. The world was very different. Some companies succeeded, but a lot of the companies were kind of Me Too, fell behind, burning capital companies. Absolutely. There are a ton of these investments that will be dead ends.
The chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, also believes AI is not like the dot-com bubble. And indeed, unlike railways, there are not a finite number of LLMs. We'll simply keep developing and improving the technology. Businesses can also keep building on top of LLMs and finding use cases that solve real-world problems. The technology does work when you use it correctly. It fails when you try to force it into use cases it wasn't designed for. And the problem isn't that AI is overhyped. I think the problem is that businesses are still learning how to use it effectively. Which brings us to the question everyone really wants answered. What about jobs? Now here's where I think we need to be very careful and very honest. AI is going to radically alter the economy, and here's what that actually means in practice. McKinsey found that generative AI will enhance the way STEM, creative and business and legal professions work, rather than eliminating significant number of jobs outright. So automation's biggest effects are obviously likely to hit office support, customer service, even food service employment, which could continue to decline. But by 2030, McKinsey estimates 12 million workers in the US will need to switch careers, 25% more than they projected just 2 years ago. And in Europe, that number could reach up to 12 million occupational transitions, as well as affecting 6.5% of current employment under their faster adoption scenario. In short, I think we're going to see a wide variety of people switching careers, and much smaller companies with smaller teams doing more with the help of AI. Only this week we've seen Claude's new analytical tools for Microsoft Excel, including expanded data connections and a set of AI-powered skills for tasks like cash flow modelling and valuation comparisons. In time, they could transform the work of accountants and middle management office workers entirely. But the key drawback at the moment, as the Decoder rightly points out, is the lack of a well-defined error rate for everyday office work. The need for a human in the loop who is both a domain expert and has an understanding of the probabilistic nature of AI technology has never been more needed. Adobe this week has also gone all in on agents as well, integrating third-party model support across their products. This is also significant and disruptive, but it's not apocalyptic, and this is a pattern we've seen with every major technological shift. Jobs don't just disappear, they transform. Just look at my job. The creation of YouTube and the huge cost reductions in professional camera and lighting equipment, as well as the ability to shoot in 4K, has allowed me to become a broadcaster. Previously, I would have had to join a television company to do this. Now, radiologists aren't being replaced by AI imaging analysis. They're actually becoming more productive, they're handling more cases, and they're focusing on the complex diagnosis that still require human judgment. Accountants aren't being replaced by spreadsheets. They're slowly moving from bookkeeping to strategic financial planning. To me, this is not a bubble. It's not something temporary, but it's whole-scale transformation on the scale of the Industrial Revolution. I think, though, there are 3 reasons why AI feels like a bubble, even though it isn't. First, the hype cycle is real. Companies are clearly overpromising. Marketing departments are using AI as a buzzword for everything. Investors are throwing money at anything with AI in their pitch deck. And this creates skepticism, and rightly so. How much AI slop with rocket emojis have you seen on LinkedIn this week? But underneath all that noise, the actual technology is delivering real value. It's just a lot of people aren't necessarily delivering value with it. The hype is annoying, but it doesn't invalidate the underlying transformation, and it's largely down to a lack of creativity and understanding of the technology. And that leads us to our second point. The learning curve is steep. 54% of senior business leaders feel unprepared to navigate AI's rapid advancement, and 73% of employees prioritize acquiring AI talent despite an insufficient talent pool. It takes time to learn how to use any new tool effectively, and it takes time to understand the limitations of the technology. It also takes time to redesign workflows around them. And during that learning period, there are obviously going to be failures. There are going to be disappointing results, and there are going to be abandoned projects for sure. But I don't believe that that's evidence of a bubble. I think that's evidence of a learning process. Third, I think the benefits of AI are currently unevenly distributed. Large companies are seeing massive productivity gains, while small companies are struggling. S&P 500 firms have seen 5.5 productivity improvements since ChatGPT launch, but small cap companies have actually seen productivity decline by 12.3%. And so this creates this winners and losers paradox, and it creates anxiety. It creates a narrative that AI doesn't work because for some people it genuinely isn't working yet. But again, that's not a bubble, it's an adoption curve. So where does Karpathy fit into all of this? I think his decade of agents framing is actually helpful if we interpret it correctly. He's not saying AI transformation won't work. I don't believe he's saying it's going to take a decade to get it right. I think it's a decade to work through the technical challenges, a decade to figure out the right use cases, a decade to build the infrastructure and the protocols and the standards. And honestly, I think that that's spot on. Even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has said superintelligence might arrive in a few thousand days, which is about a decade. Now remember, this isn't a sprint, but it is a marathon, and businesses that recognise that understand we're in the early innings of a decade-long transformation rather than a one-year hype cycle are going to be the ones that succeed. Now, the big questions of this week are how far AI has been affecting your role in the workplace. Has AI changed your job as a business leader, thinking differently about how your employees use AI? Have you implemented much AI in your business, or are there compliance issues that you haven't quite worked through yet? As ever, let me know in the comments. A like and subscribe will really help the channel to go, and I hope to see you next week.